Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Black Mind Garden. And I am so excited, so excited. So, this is where we're remapping minds so you can create a life you design. And I have with me a person dear to my heart, dear friend, a colleague. And I am so excited to introduce her because there's some big things going on. And we're going to talk about the parts we don't talk about inside of this conversation. But what I first want to do is introduce to you Dr. Simarta Brennan Prescott. And she is a board certified primary care doctor at Optum Primary Care's Northeast location in St. Petersburg, Florida. Her background is in internal medicine, nephrology, and hypertensive care, and she's a graduate of St. George's University School of Medicine in Grenada, West Indies. And she completed her residency at Overlook Hospital, which is an affiliate of Mount Sinai Hospital in Summit, New Jersey. She completed her nephrology fellowship training at St. Louis University School of Medicine in Missouri. And she's a motivational and inspirational speaker failing to success, multiple speaker on failing to success, multiple sclerosis, activism, elementary school activism for getting kids interested in healthcare, coach for physicians who want to improve their daily work life, and now an author. And so I'm gonna chuckle here because as long as I've known Dr. Simarta, one thing I did not know, I knew she's an author, I knew she's a speaker, but I did not know you are a coach. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate because as you're my sister from another mother.
Yes.
But but a huge part of this is getting the word out, I'm truly motivated to inspire and to redefine how people think. And I think this is a fantastic audience for that.
Absolutely. Well, so one of the first things I want to talk about is this book. So you're an author. You're just releasing this new book, and I kind of want to know what's the journey that led you to write this book. Like, what inspired you to go on this journey of writing about the parts that we don't talk about?
Well, that's a good question. So I did not get up one day deciding to be an author. I tell people I had a unique situation of being a physician, being a patient diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and also being a mother to a child with congenital heart disease. So for me, I'm on all sides of that doctor table.
Mhm.
Um, and that was a unique experience that I felt I could give voice to.
Mhm.
This experience of writing the book was really out of seeing that need to discuss things that are uncomfortable, whether from the standpoint of how physicians communicate with patients with chronic disease, how
Mhm.
patients empower themselves with the healthcare system
Mhm.
that are struggling with chronic disease, or as a parent advocate with a child with chronic disease and how to prepare themselves for the the long experience. So I truly feel a lot of people felt, oh, that's a lot in one book.
Mhm.
The biggest amazing part about this launch that we did this week, all week long,
Yeah.
is it's hitting different people, and different people are touching and learning.
Yeah.
So now we're connecting with the book for one reason, but we're learning something new that may be an out of our perspective, our circle. And I'm getting such great feedback into I just didn't know.
Yeah. It's so interesting you said, like, a lot of people said that, that's a lie in one book, but I don't think so.
Mm,
I think that, when you're talking about your story, when you're talking about your journey, when you're talking about all of the and I love how you said, like, you're on all sides of the table,
mhm.
right? As a physician, as a patient, and as a patient advocate, being, a mom,
Yeah.
right? And so I really feel that, like that full journey. And I think because a lot of times, especially as women physicians, there are all of these things that we're dealing with, all of these hats that we're wearing, and yet the only thing that they're in silos. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying?
Compartmentalizing, absolutely.
Compartmentalizing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, what were some of the highlights that you wanted to bring across to people in the book? Like what were some of the highlights of things that you were like, oh, I really this is from my heart. I'm like, I really want people to get this aspect.
Absolutely. One of the main things I want people to walk away with is going from surviving to thriving
Mm.
does not include perfection.
Mm.
Absolutely the complete opposite. It's owning your own space in this world and what that looks like, and
Mhm.
understanding that it may look different for someone else. Specifically, I address things like multiple sclerosis. What
Mhm.
I've found is through my medical experience,
Mhm.
it's hard to get that perspective off the table of
Mhm.
what patients should look like.
Mhm.
No two patients with multiple sclerosis look the same.
Right.
The other thing I want people to know is we know the words, but a lot of people don't know what it is. What does
Mhm.
it mean for our family member, our loved one, or for ourselves?
Mhm.
So it's important to me to people to realize it's an autoimmune disease. It literally is the body's producing um, and attacking the actual nerves in
Yeah.
the brain, the spine, and the eye, the
Mhm.
optic nerve.
Mhm.
And that means with it being able to attacking different places, everybody's going to present differently.
Mhm.
Another huge take home I want people to realize is we don't know the cause. We have genetic predisposition on there,
Mhm.
within environmental um, reasons, but that's where research is so important. And research has really changed the dynamics of the living of somebody with multiple sclerosis.
Mhm. Mhm.
80% of people with it have what we call relapsing remitting. What does that
Mhm.
mean? It means their symptoms come and go.
Yeah.
So when we interact with people with multiple sclerosis, or we're trying as healthcare people, we have to take the scope when it comes to chronic disease in truly doing the open-ended questions,
Mhm.
realizing that different people are going to be in different stages of their journey.
Mhm.
So, how can we communicate to make that effective? I'm hugely passionate about that, because I think it's going to benefit not only the healthcare provider and the patient
Mhm.
relationship, but also it's going to let them be able to do the best towards not just surviving, but thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings to mind a few things actually, um, when we talk about, uh, especially chronic diseases like multiple sclerosis, where they're, like you said, relapsing, remitting, right? Where the symptoms can be there and then they can be gone and then they can be there. I want to talk about the kind, there's so many things going through my head, so many questions going
I
through my head,
know.
because there's so much to talk about, right?
Yes.
The one, okay, there's one place I'm gonna go, and then I'm gonna come back around to another question that I have, which is the trauma that one experiences inside of this diagnosis, right?
Great question.
Not only the personal trauma, but the trauma of interacting with the healthcare system
Yes.
with
Yes.
this diagnosis. I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about what's your take on that.
Absolutely. So, typically in chronic disease, sometimes, especially like in multiple sclerosis, patients can see up to 5 doctors before getting diagnosed.
Mm.
The average person, an average is a very, goes up 2 years before diagnosis with symptoms, you know, And that means that that's a huge emotional burden they're going through even before being diagnosed. So
Mhm.
what you find is when somebody finally gets that diagnosis, there's a sense of relief. I'm not crazy.
Mhm.
There's something actually wrong, and we can label it.
Yeah.
I'm going to shoot on the other side, though. My personal experience is, as a background of being a physician, it was actually terrible. I wasn't satisfied with knowing,
Mhm.
because now I have a label that I had pre notions about,
You're right.
pre beliefs. So I was actually upset.
Mhm.
And this is when the whole grief process kicks in. So we talk about, the 5 stages model of grief, but we only think of death and dying. But
Mhm.
reality is, you have to grieve whenever you have a change in your body and unpredictable. It's literally traumatic.
Yeah.
So I think if we look at it from that standpoint, when we come up against patients with it, we'll realize, depending on what stage of their grief they're in,
Mhm.
it is how we're going to have to tackle it as healthcare providers. As
Mm.
patients, this denial is one of the greatest hindrance to getting the appropriate care.
Mm.
I can't say it once. I got to say it twice.
Please.
Denial is the greatest hindrance. So we want to be able to move through that. How do I know? I did it.
Mhm.
Um, it's truly a powerful tool of acceptance,
Yes.
because now you're going to equip yourself with the information you need, the help you need.
Mhm.
For chronic disease, example, multiple sclerosis, it is a multidisciplinary method to
Mhm.
care. This
Yes.
is not, okay, we're going to take one pill and everything's going to get better.
Yes.
No. I've been through the wheelchair, the walker, the cane. I've been through multiple therapy changes,
Mhm.
um, changing doctors, physical
Mhm.
therapy,
Mhm.
occupational therapy. We have to realize that all these pieces are a part of the puzzle towards getting yourself to a better place.
Yeah.
We talked about all the physical, but what about the mental health?
Right.
Depression is 7 times as likely in somebody with chronic disease.
Yeah.
So we may be handling the physical aspect,
Mhm.
but what about our mental health?
Yes, yes. We cannot forget about that. And I love how you languaged, um, the grief process that happens whenever there's a change in the body, a new diagnosis. It's something that is so often overlooked.
Mhm.
And especially, like you talked about having the knowledge about multiple sclerosis and being diagnosed, it was not a sigh of relief. And so for those who may have had a family member or may have had a friend or may have
Mhm.
seen something like this on TV even, and then
Yeah,
they realize that they get that diagnosis, even though there may like maybe like a brief period moment of like, oh, I know what it is, then it's like, oh no, it's this thing,
yeah.
right? And so yeah,
Absolutely.
I believe that that grief is
And
so necessary.
absolutely, we have to get through the stages and get the resources we need at every level.
Yes.
One of the things I talk about a lot, in my experience, is owning it. It is not you, it is a part of you.
Yes.
And getting your mindset correct to be able to accept that as, okay, today I need this, I need that
Mhm.
tomorrow, then keep it moving. One of the big goals I have is showing people we all look different.
Mhm.
And some people need to see someone like me, someone
Mhm.
like you.
Mhm.
That's how dynamic this is, but that does not negate success.
That's right.
You define that.
I was just gonna say, you went straight. It's like we were like right here in the mind, because that was my next question is when I look at like someone like you who I've known for many years, and see how you have owned and how you not you didn't haven't let this like sort of defeat or stop you. Like, it's like, okay, you allow yourself to go through that grief process. And I love the way you said that, it allows us, going through the grief process allows us to get to the point where we can access those resources, get to the point where we can do the next thing. And how you say it is not who you are, it is a diagnosis that you have, and that
Mm.
can be managed. So I just wanted to like underline that, because that was actually the other question that I was in my mind, like, oh, I want to ask. So thank you for just really like lifting that up. That's just so great.
Absolutely. Another huge takeaway I want people to have is how we interact with people with chronic disease. So
Mhm.
it may be your loved one, your mother. The truth is, as a person with chronic disease myself and as a physician, I realize we need to recognize that when we have empathy, we still need to realize we don't know what to say in the beginning is okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, the reality is we need to own our own confusion and just ask questions.
Yeah.
Open as give them a chance to tell their story and what level they're at. That
Mhm.
also means that they might not be ready. And you
Mhm.
have to be able to accept that their response may not fill your cup, but
Mhm.
of knowledge, but
Mhm.
you are there for them and you can just declare that.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing I always tell people, the default when we're uncomfortable is to talk about ourselves or where we're coming from.
Right.
And the reality is, people start sharing, I call it the unfound advice.
Yeah. Yes.
And I always say, I want to educate people. Trust me, we all have Google.
Mhm.
There are worse scenarios out there of somebody with MS. They
Mhm.
already know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Try to share that positivity. If you really need to tell them about your loved one, make sure it's a good story. Make
Mhm.
sure you're sharing that positive energy, because
Mhm.
that's what anybody needs with chronic disease.
Mhm.
Um, Otherwise, they'll find every scary story they need.
Absolutely. And I think you bring to mind another big point, is that, really sometimes it's best not to talk about yourself, right?
Mhm,
When you're a caretaker or a family member or a loved one or a friend, it's really, if you want to talk about your experience, talk about it with someone else, but not with the person who's having the experience, because we have to understand that when we're encountering people who are going through their own grief process, it's not a time to center ourselves. That's not trauma informed.
mm,
And so I just like, to the people who are adjacent to those people who may be diagnosed with a chronic disease, such as
mhm,
multiple sclerosis, it's a time to really ask, how can I support you? What
mm,
do you need? How can I be of support? And to your point, it may be, well, I just need a little bit of time. I just need, I'm not ready to talk about it yet.
mhm,
Right. And I do believe that, yeah, asking questions,
mhm.
is okay. But I think the first thing to ask your loved one is, how can I best support you? Because then
Yeah.
they'll give you the information. Oh, like, maybe I don't want to talk about it right now, or maybe sometimes I just need to vent, or maybe
Right.
I need to help going to my doctor's appointments, or could you come with me, or nothing. You just being here works.
So a lot of my goals when I educate patients is to say, hey, you're going to create a circle, multiple circles, and people are going to do different things for you. You're not going to find that you can expect the same from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So they may be somebody who can take you to the supermarket,
Mm-hmm.
somebody who can pick up your medication. You
Mm-hmm.
want to have all these circles of plans or
Mm-hmm.
plan Bs for the
Mm-hmm.
people in your life that
Mhm,
want to support you. That's key
mhm,
in planning your health.
mhm,
Another takeaway I always want patients to have is, e- from the mental health standpoint, that neighbor who's always negative Nelly, maybe that's not the person you want to have that conversation with.
mhm.
So it
Yes.
seems harsh, but you have to realize where you're at as the individual. and what different people resources you have and for what reason. So it does take a little bit of planning.
Yeah.
Now, as a parent
Mm-hmm.
with a child with healthcare, I tell people give yourself grace.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you, when it comes to being a parent, my son's had two open heart surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in it for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna burn out if you don't have mechanism to use different resources
Mm-hmm.
and also self-care. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's a word they throw around. Like, how are you going to do that?
Right.
Absolutely. For you to be there for someone else, you're going to have to be there for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and that's and it's and to map on being someone who's diagnosed with chronic disease, who's also a mom of a child who has some healthcare challenges, right? So then it's infinitely more important that we have like you have a structure for your own um, pouring back into you is how I like to call it, right? How
Hmm.
do you
I like
pour
that.
back into yourself when you're always pouring into others? What are the communities out there? Like I love how you bring community into it. That's one of my favorite things is and it's a thing that I learned very late in life, right?
I think I
Admit
think
it.
a lot of us didn't realize it, but also I think the change of the internet, the community, it can be in multiple terminology. It can be
Mm,
physically where you are at. It
mhm,
can be in your workspace. It can
mhm.
be, on the internet.
Yeah.
The point is, I tell people you want to engage in constructive support groups.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and I think that for all three of my triage, I think physicians need to have support groups. I think patients need to make sure they attend support groups, and also parents.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Somebody's been through it before you. You want to yield on their knowledge so that you can see the power in what they've done and what you can do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the things that you know, that I say I'm taking away from for the audience, meaning like I just want to underline for the audience is just this whole concept of community and knowing who what particular person provides what, right? Like being
Mhm.
discerning. You said something earlier, like if you have a neighbor or you have a person in your life that's sort of that negative Nelly, what do you do about that? You know, some people might say cut them off, but it may not be a person you can cut off.
Mhm.
But it can be a person maybe that you can put a little distance between. It may be a person you need to set some firm boundaries. You know, I think that self-advocacy is very important and a lot of times that comes outside of the office as well as inside of the office.
Yeah.
So you have to advocate for your own mental and emotional well-being with a person in your life. That requires setting boundaries, right?
Yes. Yes. I absolutely think that's one of the biggest rewards when you're thriving.
Hmm.
Um, by setting boundaries, you're going to proliferate better. You're going to be able to function in that existence better. And that's one of the key take home or nuggets I tell people all the
Hmm.
time. We are not seeking perfection. No 2 days are the same. And once we let that go, that now opens up the ability to do more for yourself with that time.
Yeah. Yeah. You bring to mind, like in this conversation, a theme that I often talk about when I do sort of my NLP trainings when I teach in corporate is being at the source of your life. And that's one thing I can really like uplift and say and like highlight about you is that with all of the journey that you've had, you've always put yourself at the source of it. Like, how can I be in I hesitate to use the word in control because you know we doctors we are control freaks. But how can we as how can we be I'm gonna pause here. I'm recording, so no. No, 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 no. I'm recording. When I finish, I'll be downstairs. Thank you. So, oh, mom duties never end. So, when we put ourselves at the source of our situations, at our circumstance, in the driver's seat, that's where I was going with that. In the driver's seat, right? Because
Yes.
a lot of times when there's a diagnosis or when there's a circumstance, it's easy to be slid over to the passenger side and to let the
Hmm.
circumstance drive, right? Or
Yeah.
sometimes be thrown into the back seat or the trunk. But when we put ourselves in the source or in the driver's seat, then it's empowering. And that's what I see about you, is that you're empowered inside of all of your journey, all of the things that you have going on. You've put yourself in the driver's seat, and I think that's a very important thing to really uplift in this conversation. And I think that, like in the book, that's what gets communicated.
Yes. That is truly my goal, to show within flaws, within challenges, everybody has them. That great or small, but how we thrive is we really capture what we're experiencing, and we try to say how can we best control ourselves, to make this work for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's what are my vision, and that's one of the things I tell people. You have to be intentional all day long.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's where that drive comes from. How can we be intentional and truly get what we want out of the experiences we set for ourselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I can't wait for people to pick up your book, to experience it. And, I would love for you to share how people can get a hold of this book. How can people get a hold of this book?
Oh,
Yes, hold it up.
I'm gonna hold it up strong. So the parts we don't talk about, um, head to our website, www.drsimarta, super simple, drsimarta.com. For our other listeners, it's on Amazon. We even have, because we know in this real world we're all busy, we have it on audio coming this Saturday as well. So we have it in libraries locally. We're trying to make sure the word is out and spread so that we can create a movement of information and empowerment.
Hmm. That is awesome. That is awesome. drsimarta.com,
Yeah,
drsimarta.com. If you're watching the video live, you can see the name here. If you're watching it on YouTube, and if you're listening on the podcast, on the audio podcast, when it comes out, you'll be able to see all of this in the show notes. We will have all of this in the show notes. I'm just so grateful. And just to ask also, so we're talking about where to get the book. Is this also where people who want you to come and speak, who want to hire you for author conversations, book conversations, is this also where they go as well?
absolutely. It's a one-stop shop in communicating with me and getting the word out. I want to be able to provide people with an easy context to be able to speak at events. Um, I've had people reach out, just, you are not alone. We can create a coaching process where we can start pivoting from surviving to thriving
Yeah,
together.
I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Well, thank you so much for like coming in, especially during this busy time, especially during your book launch, and highlighting this conversation, highlighting your book. And I just look forward to having people really get into this journey. And I think that you really do belong in community on stages having this conversation, because these are the parts that we don't talk about, right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Of course. So thank you all for those who are listening. We know without you there is no podcast. Please share this. Share this episode with a friend, a colleague, a family member This is how we get the word out. Go buy the book. Go to the website, buy the book. And if you're in a community organization, church, whatever that this, this conversation will be valuable to you and to your community, your audience, please contact Dr. Simarta and have her on your stage and in front of your group. And also, I also invite those of you who are listening on your podcast platform, leave a comment, leave a review, let us know the value that you got from these episodes, and particularly from this one. So with that, I will bid you all adieu. Thank you again, Dr. Simarta. You all have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful rest of the week, and we will see you on the next episode.